We're back for another episode of the Automator Series, and I'm here with the lovely Dawna Campbell. So firstly, thanks so much for jumping on all from the States.
And thank you so much for having me here with you today, Gavin. It's a pleasure to be a part of this.
I'm really appreciative to hear that. So for the people who don't know you and your awesome self, I'd love to just hand it over to you to say hi to everyone, and then also just give a quick introduction about who you are, the type of work you're doing, why you're passionate about it. Yeah, and we can just take it from there.
Okay. All right. Well, here in the United States, I'm known as a mind whisperer. So what I do is I combine the science and the physics behind spirituality and use universal laws to make internal changes with people, working on the deeper subconscious to put that in alignment with what we feel, with what we think, to create results 100% of the time. So what that has led me to be is I have a healing practice that is international now for the last 12 years. I'm also a best-selling author and a professional speaker, sharing these wisdom secrets all over stage. And of course, in the book, Financially Fit.
No, it's incredible. And I mean, the fact that you've been in this focus for 12 years is even more awesome, to be able to work with people in that way and obviously work within your passions for so long. Has it always been with the same focus over those 12 years, or has it kind of also naturally developed and gone along a few kind of curves and paths?
What happened for me was my original career. I was a financial advisor and a managing principal of an investment firm. So I was responsible for $500 million of other people's money. But that amount of stress, worry, and pressure broke down my health. And after spending 2 years in the medical community, doctors weren't able to discover what was wrong with me. So I turned to natural healing and natural medicine. And that was when I uncovered I could not digest food. And they said there was something in the outside world that I couldn't digest, which is why I was internalizing, not digesting food. And as I was becoming healthier, that was when I learned the infidelity of my marriage, and the emotion that I could not digest was anger. So I knew there was a mind-body connection. So I moved to an ashram for a year, which is a spiritual living community, to uncover the secrets of that mind-body connection, the physics, meditation, brainwave patterns. And when I left there, I was unemployable in the financial services world because it was during the global recession and nobody was hiring. So those are the 3 areas clients today I've noticed ask about is health, wealth, or relationships that they want to change in. Yeah. So I directed my whole course, went down the healing path, and met other natural healers like medicine women and Buddhist monks and yogic healers and shamans, and started putting this together. So here I am. That's probably was 15 years ago. So 12 years professionally now in the practice, sharing the wisdom, the knowledge, and the techniques to do this for yourself and make the changes.
No, incredible. I mean, I'm really curious, would you have gone back to the financial world if it hadn't been the recession and you could have got a job? Would you have happily gone back to it?
I had been interviewing at the very few places. Yes, and that was my anticipation. And I even called back my old employer to see if they would reinstate my employment. And all of the answers were no. So that told me it wasn't the right pathway. Yeah. And then I just remember making some promises that if it's not going to be what I studied in, then I'm going to follow this healing path and all the things the natural healers have taught me. And I'm going to share this with the world. And when you make a promise like that to the universe, immediately there's a corrective change. And that's what you get to go do, because it was instant. It was instantaneous.
Yeah. But what's really surprising for me is that it was like working in that environment is what seemed to have caused a lot of these like internal actions and the stress and the buildup and everything. Yes. And then that's why you went on that kind of discovery journey. But then I'm just surprised you were keen to go back to that world when you knew that's kind of what had
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that it was specifically from the financial services world, because I had personal stuff in there as well. And I knew the common thread with all of it was me. in all three of those areas, which is why I went on that journey. So wherever you go, there they are, they say. So for me, once I uncovered it and I was better, healthier, balanced, centered, well, yes, go back into your profession. But, the universe had a different plan for me. I remember when I was little growing up, I grew up near the poverty line in Silicon Valley. And I remember being so passionate to helping other people with their families and their children get ahead in life. And that's what I wanted to do. So I followed the worldly path of the how-to method. And that's why I chose to become a financial advisor. That wasn't my how-to method. So today I'm still passionate about doing those things and helping people. It expanded somewhat from the financial world to include health and relationships, but it was that same passion today that drives me. It's just that the how-to method is different, because what I learned from the financial services world was that's not necessarily the pathway for everyone, but yet be in alignment with yourself in the subconscious to how you feel to what you're thinking to create a result in the outside world. It's an inside out philosophy, hands down, probably the best thing that I've ever figured out to really create the life we're meant to live.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you're saying even as a kid, you were, because of your upbringing, even as a kid, you were looking for ways to help people in kind of the same situation and things like that.
Yes. I remember my mom asking me one time what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I remember looking at that or going, well, I'm going to join Greenpeace and save the whales, which was not the right answer. So she wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist. And so as it developed, I'm like, well, I can be a financial advisor. Why not? But that wasn't my pathway.
Yeah, no, but that brings up a really interesting point. And it's funny enough, a thing I've been speaking to quite a few people about the last few days, and that it's like there's many ways to achieve a result. Like if someone wants to be happy, there's so many kind of offers or mechanisms, some people call them, to get people to there. It's just finding kind of what works for a certain group of people, what resonates with them. You first thought it was through the financial advisor and helping people with their finances. And then you realized for you and for the people, it was kind of a different thing in the middle that was going to help achieve those results.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so the last couple of years, I've taken my individual healing practice that I've had internationally, and I've been expanding it. So I wrote a book called Financially Fit because I saw the commonalities between money, energy, emotions, and who we are as human beings. And I saw it in my client practice every day. And that is the basis for the Financially Fit program that I teach and share today. And then I took the book, expanded that even more, and now I'm going out onto the professional stages to talk about it and to teach this and to show it and to demonstrate how your energy and how to shift and change that through vibration, energy, and frequency, and then how it will influence your outside world. And when it happens, you feel it instantaneously in the body because it happens that fast. Your brain will process it and give you a new sensation.
Yeah. One thing I've definitely learned as well is when you come at things from the inside out, it's like changing the internals. That's also what keeps you kind of on the path of it in the long run and creates the long running changes as opposed to just short term kind of gets you excited and then you make changes for a few weeks or a few months. But it's like fixing the internals is what keeps you on it for years and years and years.
It does. And this is how it works. Your subconscious records everything from the moment that you're born to the day you exit this earth. And what it's doing is it's just keeping a record of every single event moment by moment. And then it's assigning the emotions and feelings that you're feeling in those moments to those events. The problem is our conscious awareness is only recognizing 10% of that, maybe. Scientists measured Albert Einstein's brain, and his conscious awareness was 10%. Which means over 90% of the time, we don't know how we are feeling to associate into the event. And the subconscious is like a mind loop pattern. It creates an automated response system that repeats over and over and over and over again. So later in life, when you're trying to say, create more income, but more income isn't coming no matter what you do, and all you get is frustration. Well, frustration got encoded somewhere to an event, probably somewhere in childhood, that created that, because that was the feeling and emotion that got associated and created that as a pattern in your life. So what I do is I help you discover where that is and where it's at in the body. And then we can release that frustration and transform it into whatever it was that was needed in the event. So in the event, you didn't need to be frustrated. You might have needed a sense of pride, for example, but you know what that is. So when I ask the questions, we can uncover from your point of view what that is. And then I witness and watch that energetically change in you through meditation techniques that I use on me to change the vibrational frequency in you. And it's a permanent change. So we're aligning how we think to how we feel, which is heart-mind coherence, to get a result 100% of the time. Because the disparity comes of, I want to create more money or more abundance to have XYZ, but yet you feel unworthy or a lack, for example. Well, if you feel unworthy or a lack, you're going to get that returning to you, not the abundance of money.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've experienced personally. And it's kind of where I made very big leaps and bounds in the last 2 years, because I had a coach who, he wasn't like a wealth coach or anything like that, but he was actually focused on sales, but it turned into a lot of childhood work and kind of really digging into like, where did kind of our programming come from? And yeah, I realized a lot of things in regards to like upbringing turned me into someone who kind of holds onto money a lot more, like preferring the safety, and being raised in the country where there's just so much poverty. And it created a lot of stuff I didn't realize until we started just talking about it. Even just talking about it brought up so much of it, and I wouldn't have even thought about talking about it or even thought much of it until someone kind of put a light on it.
Absolutely. And it's not that we're not unaware, it's just that we're not paying attention with our awareness to uncover what those emotions are and how they really do affect us and how it stops us in life. Part of my own personal journey was, after I had a second child, I was trying to release the excess weight from having another baby. And I was going to the gym, I was eating correctly, I had a personal trainer, I had food logs and diets. And a year later, no change. I changed gyms, trainers, food logs, diets, 6 more months, nothing changed. And it didn't matter what it was. But it wasn't until after I discovered, well, one, I wasn't digesting food during that time, and I had a lot of pain in my body, but what was happening in my marriage. And when I realized that it was anger, when he left, I was no longer angry and I was happy. And I quit the gym because I didn't care. I quit eating the things I didn't want to eat, like salad. I didn't keep a food log. And if I wanted brownies for dinner, I had them. And 3 months later, I walk into the office at my financial services job, and my assistant looks at me and goes, "Dawna, you have to buy new clothes." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Turn around, look behind you." And my suits were hanging off of me. And I got on the scale and realized I released 40 pounds of emotional weight of anger that I had been holding on to. Because when I was eating, I wasn't eating the food in a happy state. I was eating very angrily and didn't realize it or didn't know it. So emotions have a weight to it, and a physical component, as well as a mental, emotional, and spiritual components in that. And we're just not aware. It was totally hidden to me until hindsight later, looking back, now I get it and understand it.
Yeah. I mean, even for someone like me, who's from a background of like very logical, very sciencey and all that, like in the last 2 years, like so much of this has just kind of become like, that totally makes sense. Because when you think about it, if you're living in this constant state of like slight stress, almost like PTSD, I guess, just like your nervous system is running at 100% all the time. Your cortisol is like shooting through the roof because you're stressed and you don't even realize it. I mean, that stuff has such big kind of knock-on effects. So I'm guessing this information, because that's how our body deals with stuff. And it's like, it makes complete sense even from just a biological standpoint.
Right. And with the heavier emotions like anger and frustration, stress, worry, anxiety, depression, eventually over time, it goes into the physical body and creates that density, and it starts creating physical level dis-ease. So the high levels of cortisol keeps the adrenals in fight or flight, and then they get overtaxed, and then it's adrenal fatigue, and then it goes into this, and it's just a snowball effect until you recognize what those emotional components are and then start changing them to the ones that you needed. Now, the higher emotions like happiness and joy and prosperity and peace and balance are very light emotions. There's virtually no weight to them. And those are our natural state of beings. So those are the emotions that repair the density within the physical body. So when you make that change, on a physical level, that physical level dis-ease can't stay in the body, because before you were matching in emotion and vibration here with whatever it is. When you raise that and you're in a happier, lighter state, this is still resonating down here. So it has no choice but to leave and exit the body. And that's how we can make change in that level.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier we're kind of only conscious of about 10% of everything that's going on. And that remaining 90%, so if I understood correctly, kind of unlocking it is almost just more awareness. It's not like some crazy transformation. It's just developing that awareness and developing those muscles.
Yes, absolutely right. And the very, very first question that anybody can ask themselves is, how do I feel about whatever it is? And so say you want to create more wealth and more income. Well, how do I feel if I create more wealth and income? Well, you're going to get answers about joy and happiness and euphoria, and I can have freedom and do whatever I want. Well, that's not the state you're currently in. So ask yourself, how do I feel not having that today? And then you'll get different answers. Most common are frustration is that answer. I'm frustrated because it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't return. The next step is to identify in the body where you feel the frustration, because the body will always give the subconscious a referral point back to when it first started. The third question that you can ask yourself is, when was the first time I ever felt this feeling, wherever it is at in my body? Most of the time it's in the heart or in the stomach area. And you go back to the first time. For many of us, it's childhood. And then you ask yourself, well, what happened at age 8? And you will have a memory come into the subconscious, and that's the way to access it. And then we can review the event and see what was needed, make that change energetically. When you review the event again, you review it from a different point of view. You won't have the same perspective. The event doesn't change, but how you feel about it is completely different. And this is the technique that the medicine woman taught me, and she called it pivot and shift. And then when you go back to the referral point in the body, you will feel the body completely different, because the brain already made the new chemicals in the synapse that flush through the body instantaneously. So if you were to rub an onion on the bottom of your foot, you would taste it in your mouth in a matter of seconds. That's how fast our feelings and emotions run through our body. So when you review where that was in the body, it should feel lighter or better, or not as stuck, no matter where you were holding it. And then you start looking forward. Now, how do I feel about creating more money? And you may not be as frustrated. And that's the energy, because the universe is always returning to you the main energy you were sending out. But the first step is creating the awareness to understand what is the main energy I'm sending out. And then the second step is to change it. And then the third step is to bring in the new energy that you changed it to and move forward. So it's all about discovering, releasing, and transforming. And I call that DIRT, DIRT, to discover, release, and transform.
You're uncovering the dirt, basically.
Uncovering the dirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's really interesting. And I mean, for each of those memories that you kind of work through and find attached to a certain emotion, do you kind of just work through one by one, or do you often have to go back to the same one and kind of, it does take a few times to fully kind of embody the reframe?
Right. Usually the reframe happens automatically. But when I work with a client, I ask them, okay, now let's go back to when you were 3. Tell me, how does that event look and feel to you now? and they'll re-describe it. And if it's not in the light, euphoric, blissful type of state, then I start uncovering what else was needed for them, because maybe they needed many things, not just one or two things. And then we just keep re-encoding until we have that feeling of what it's like to really move forward in this new state. And so sometimes you have to go through that process 2 or 3 times. But usually once that event has changed and the feeling and the perspective behind it, you don't revisit it because it's completely changed. We're not changing the event, we're changing how we feel about it. So if we're feeling happy about the event versus stressed about the event, it's not going to come back up when you ask, well, I have stress, so when was the first time? That event may not come up. Certain emotions are kind of multifaceted, like fear, resentment, anger. So you might have to be completely void of most anger. You might have to go through that, and you'll be associated with different events throughout time for different things where that emotion got stuck. One of them is resentment. That was with me growing up with my mom. And I had to go back when I felt the energy to go back because it associated with anger and change how I felt about that event. And when it surfaced again, then I would go back, but it would be a different event that I would recall in my subconscious. And eventually I did so much work around that I had nothing but complete love and gratitude. There's no resentment. There's all forgiveness. And there's not any ill feelings. My mom was my best teacher, all of that. So the resentment has been fully cleared now around all of that for several years. And it just doesn't surface anymore for me.
Yeah, I mean,
so some things take a little work.
Yeah, no, it sounds like for you and for the people you're working with in this way, it must be extremely freeing to kind of like let go of all that, which you didn't realize was still weighing you down.
Yes, absolutely. And then even to me, because I was my own first client, today I still use the same processes on myself. So if I'm feeling in a state that's not in the happy, joy energy, it's like, well, all right, what's happening? I'm not 100% happy today. So what do I need to shift and change? And then I find the emotion and feeling, and I go through the same process myself, but I catch it. Most of the time I catch it in the moment when I experience it, and I can change it on the spot in the moment. So I don't have to lock it in and go back and go through the whole process. So the awareness is the key.
Yeah, I imagine that's the skill in itself as well, is just that awareness to be able to catch yourself in those moments and not let it kind of something that happened 2 years ago kind of still carry with you because you didn't catch it in the moment. Like that's the skill in itself as well.
Absolutely. And where a lot of our emotions got encoded to give us a pattern to repeat, they happen in childhood while we're in a theta brainwave. This is the brainwave pattern where you're asleep, but you're awake, but you're falling asleep, but you're awake. And when you're a child, from the time you're born to about the age 7 or 8, you're predominantly in a theta brainwave. So you're learning everything around you energetically, absorbing everything as vibration and frequency. So that's why when we ask the question, when was the first time? We know we're going back to a very young age when that got experienced. Very rarely does it not go back to that young age, but it was in there somewhere.
I've read this pretty awesome book about sleep called Why We Sleep by this guy named Dr. Matthew Walker. And I wonder if it's related to this because he mentions, I think it was in that book, that when we sleep, our brain is kind of also doing lots of like garbage removal and also like bringing different pieces of information together, like creating connections and synapses and all that type of stuff. I wonder if that's why your brain is kind of more in that state when you're younger to constantly be creating new connections, learn about the world, things like that.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how the brain learns. And it's through all of those neuron connections, and it's repetitive. And that's exactly how it works. And when you sleep, your body goes into repair mode. So if you're not sleeping well at night, your body's not repairing on a daily basis. And then your cells get deformed and those ones start to replicate. So sleep is a huge part of it, but sleep disturbances can be caused by a lot of different things. not just one or two things, but there's always an emotional component to what is causing that. And when that changes, then sleep comes and then your body repairs because you're sleeping. But that subconscious never rests. It's completely recording everything, including while you sleep, even while you dream. Even if you don't remember your dreams, they're still somewhere in the subconscious.
I actually just listened to one of the coolest podcasts it was about sleep and learning by this neuroscientist named Dr. Andrew Huberman. I'm not sure if you've ever come across him.
I have not.
But what like really blew my mind in this podcast, specific about the learning part, is he said that after you do like a new sport or activity, like if you go surfing or play guitar, whatever, apparently if you just sit with your eyes closed, like not trying to do anything, like as soon as you can after doing that exercise, your brain almost like straight away starts playing all of the events in reverse. But that's how you kind of like ingrain it and properly learn it. So I mean, it got me wondering if a lot of people you work with after doing these clearing exercises, if they just like have the best sleep ever, kind of like just like that clear mind right afterwards.
Most of the time, several days after, they have really, really good days. And then the world creeps in. And that's why when I work with them in groups of packages, because we fine tune every 7 to 10 days, making sure everything in their present day world and the future that they're creating is also in alignment with the changes we made that way. So absolutely. But yes, usually there's better sleep because the mind isn't processing all the stuff it needs to work on.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. And I wanted to ask this actually early on, but are you working with specific types of people? Is there kind of a theme around who you're working with? Like, are they from the corporate world or are they just people at certain age groups?
Anybody, technically. But I really look for people who are heart-centered for two different reasons. The first reason is that the healing takes place in the heart. And that's where the feelings and emotions and things are usually experienced. But when that comes into an alignment with what they're thinking, you can get the greatest movement and change. But the other reason why I look for people that are heart-centered is because they're usually of a giving nature. They want to be of service. They want to make the world a better place or leave a legacy or. And they're not just doing it for themselves. They're doing it for their spouses or their family or for other reasons in addition to themselves, because it's that giving nature. And it's because of that giving nature, they already have certain virtues in place, like gratitude and kindness and love and peacefulness or balance, some sort of combination of virtues that they're sharing with the world. So I know when we do the clearing and things, we're clearing out the lower energies called vices, the anger, the stress, the worry, the depression, and we're magnifying the things that are already inside of them. And then what brings me the greatest joy and the reward is when I watch them and I see them and it's 4 years later and I see something in social media and they are living the life, doing exactly what we taught them to do and programmed the brain to do exactly. And they're living what they said they wanted to do a few years earlier. And that's like the best thing because they're living the life that they love and they're loving the life that they live.
Yeah. I mean, and for you, obviously, having had your background, that must be one of the most rewarding things to see that they've had almost the same transformation as you had to have.
Yes. And that is like why I do what I do, because I want to watch other people do this and just really live and embrace life and experience it, not just go throughout the motions going, oh, I have this, or I'm sick, or I'm that. Yes, that does happen. It can all shift and change, but we're meant to live here in a blissful light state. And I'm totally convinced of that today. After the amount of time I've been doing this, I'm convinced of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a beautiful note for us to wrap up on because the timing perfectly aligns. I mean, I just love the fact that you've been in this journey for so long. And yeah, it's really cool how you came from that corporate background, but you were actually in it for like the reason of helping people. You weren't in it to just make money and all that. Like your reason into it probably quite different than most who get into the financial space. And then it's just been that natural development of working on yourself, but you're still helping others. It's always been that running theme. So I just want to thank you for sharing your stories and adventures today.
All right. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And this has been a lot of fun. So thank you.
And for people who want to connect with you and reach out to you and hear more about what you're doing and maybe work with you a little bit, what's the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way is either at my website, dawnacampbell.com, and that's DAWNA Campbell.com. Or if you want to follow on Instagram, you can just type in my name, and then I have all of my other information and stuff there, and you can direct message me through Instagram.
Perfect. And obviously everything will be included in the bottom.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Automator Series as much as I enjoyed having it. And there are two things I want you to do now. I want you firstly to follow me on YouTube, get that subscription in, because you're going to see all the new episodes popping up in that case, and you can stay on top of the series. And the second thing is, I want you to reach out to me. If anything we discussed on the episode today resonated with you in regards to potentially taking a jump into an online spiritual coaching business, or you really have a business and you're wanting to grow that out and you're feeling like you could be impacting a lot more lives, but you don't quite have the time right now, you don't quite have the freedom you wanted, and you don't quite have those systems in place, I want you to reach out to me. It's a no pressure, no strings attached. Send me a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, email, whatever you prefer, and we can just have a conversation and a bit of a back and forth in regards to where you're at, what you're looking for, and how I might be able to help you impact more lives with what you're doing.